From a perspective, I think IIT is already very highly rated in India. But if it's rated 9 by 10, I don't think it's rated with the right reasons.
If I do UPSC, what kind of jobs can I expect? How much money do they make?
So you get probably like over $1 lakh in just basic salary, but there are a ton of perks. My personal belief is that if you don't get into a top college outside India for MBA, you should not go there. Even if you go from a top college perspective, I would highly recommend to probably come back to India.
I feel like being at the top really matters because a peer network in the MBAs is more important than what you're being taught, because what you're being taught honestly is not as important as you being in the same classroom as some other really brilliant general. It's like, how did you actually get to global scale? What's the secret for you as an app to get to 2 million people so quickly? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the tier list. Today we're going to rank something that I know is very special to many of you, which is which entrance exam should I go give? What is the scope in 2024? How much money can I make? What's the competition? You know what we're going to do on this show. You know all the fun stuff that's coming. You have to stay till the end of the video. And look, I'm not really an expert at entrance exams. I know some of them. I've given some of them maybe 10 years ago. But what I wanted to get somebody who is successful, but also has given these entrance exams recently, right? As recent as a year or 2 years ago, so that he has the most context about this space. So today I have Akshay with me from Stimuler. Akshay, you have both. You have given entrance exams very recently, you're still young. And at the same time, you run a very successful company, which actually does English upskilling, right? Which allows people to have a conversation with an English AI assistant. And many of the users of your app are actually using it to go give IELTS and stuff like that. So you have so much understanding of the space now, both as an entrepreneur and 2 years ago as an individual going and giving these exams. Before we start rating, I would love to know your story, like a very, very quick abridged version, and then we'll get started.
Perfect. So very excited to do this because I was in this boat a couple of years back. But yeah, I'm Akshay, I'm 23. I graduated out of IIT JEE doing engineering last year. And in college, I was mostly doing a bunch of things, debating and stuff. And in my third year, I started a company, which Varun briefly talked about. So Stimula allows you to get better at English conversational skills. We want to build a global consumer tech brand from India, have over 2 million users from 200 plus countries. So happy to talk more about it, but really excited to do this. The way I'm going to approach this particularly is if a sibling of mine in class 12 or a third or fourth year of engineering asks me which exam should I give, what is the pros and cons of this exam, the advice I will try to give them is the advice I will try to have in this. So, of course, some of these exams are pretty controversial, so super excited to do this.
So you have 2 million users on your app, right? What do people do on your app?
Primarily, they come in, they have this AI avatar called Sarah. So you can talk with Sarah on different themes like hobbies, families. You can talk about scenarios, for example, negotiating a salary with your manager, or for example, giving an interview. So you can talk. The best part is feedback. So you get analyzed on every single thing about your speech. So from your uhs and ums to pauses to fluency to pronunciation, every single thing. And you get told what to do better. So it's an objective way of improving your conversational skills.
Lovely. Okay. So now that we have context, let's go through the entrance exams. I can already see what the first one is. So let's just begin with that. It is the IIT JEE 2024. Where would you rank this?
Okay, so I have an obvious bias in here. I have given this exam. I've spent 2 years of super high grinding in Kota for preparing for IIT JEE.
You went to Kota?
Yes, I went to Kota for this.
So you are a product of the Kota factory?
Unfortunately. So basically, I would still rank it in S. Now, there's a reason for that. So from a perspective, I think IIT is already very highly rated in India. I don't need to speak much about it. But if it's rated 9 by 10, I don't think it's rated with the right reasons. Yeah. So people rate IIT because of placements. I think the much bigger part or better part of being in an IIT is just the peer group you get in. Yeah. Right? I'm going to give you 2 examples. Because in my first year, I started getting an interest in debating. Yeah. I tried to do it at a better level. Yeah. Now, IIT had a club in it. IIT had a teammate in it. Yeah. And by the third year, I was doing debating at the World Championships. That's the scale you can get into any single activity in IIT. Second part, I wanted to start a startup. By the time I graduated out of my college, I already had 3 co-founders. I had already raised a ton of money.
And you already know those co-founders are smart.
Yeah, I know that they are smart, they are different interests, they have similar motivations. So you know all of those things, you're able to get those people, and that's the best part about being an IIT. The reason I'll put in S though is not just because of that, because even if you don't get into an IIT, I think the tech world has leveled so much that even if you are probably in an NIT or a BitSat or a different college, you still have opportunities to get into tech. And your engineering degree would be valuable, plus you can do other things also.
So you're saying giving the JEE allows you to get into some of those secondary colleges?
Yes. So you can get into NITs, for example, through JEE. And all of these colleges are still helpful in terms that you can go definitely further into tech. But more importantly, you have your options open. So much of the people who would be watching this video, for example, would have zero clue of what probably they should go about. And if that's the case, I always recommend go for IIT JEE because you would get at least options with that. So that's the number one thing. The only caveat here I would add is that if you do have a strong interest in something else, please don't get persuaded into IIT JEE. I know a couple of friends who were great at social sciences, for example, but they still wasted 2 years of their life in preparing for JEE. And till they realized this, 2 years were gone, which is the most important period in our education life. So I think that's the only caveat. But if you don't have a clue or if you are inclined even slightly towards engineering or tech, go for IIT JEE.
Lovely. So that's the IIT JEE. That's the default. We had to start with that. Next, let us do UPSC.
Okay, so my mom is not going to be happy about ranking it lower, but
I'll give it to you. You should rank it first.
Yeah. So I would probably rank it at a B.
Okay.
So I will tell you the reason behind it. So I think the important thing to note here is that the ranking would be very different for two different use cases, right? So someone in class 9th or 10th or 11th or 12th who is thinking about UPSC very seriously, I would still probably rank it at an A from their perspective, because you can probably choose humanities, you can choose things which favor IIT's UPSC syllabus for that matter, and you can spend your 4 years through that. But if you are someone who has graduated from an engineering college, if you are in a tech job, or if you are looking for a tech job or something like that, and then you are considering, okay, societal pressure is high. For example, I am from Bihar, right? If you're from Bihar or a UP or regions where UPSC is very highly respected, and you think that, okay, I should leave my tech job and probably go for a UPSC, I would strongly advise against it, primarily for two reasons again. It's a very, very, very difficult thing to crack. I think that there are lakhs of people appearing in it. You would literally have probably 100 grade seats, probably 1,000 seats to begin with, and that's a very low percentage. So that's one, and you would be competing with those people who made that decision in class 9 or a 10 perspective. So that's the one thing to consider, right? The second thing is that what happens is that people don't give up on UPSC once they have chosen it. So a lot of people, when they start preparing for UPSC, they probably do it for 1 year, but then they think that, okay, I probably missed it by 5-10 marks. Let me give it another chance. So if you see the average number of times a person takes a UPSC examination, that's often 3 or 4. And that means that suddenly you see resumes, and I see that a lot when we are hiring. You see resumes where the person had an excellent tech graph. The person was doing something probably great in tech, Samsung, not any other company, right? They were doing some tech job for 2 years. Then they took a 4-year break due to UPSC. When they realized it didn't work out for them, then they return back. Suddenly there's a huge gap, right?
Between you and your peers.
Between you and your peers. Plus, you have probably missed out on tech. So take the example of someone who was probably in a tech company in 2019. Suddenly they took a break for UPSC. They realized that, okay, I'm probably 5 marks short. Let's try it again and again and again. The thing about UPSC is that you are never too far. But in order to really make it in, it's a long effort, right? And for example, in IIT, if you don't get into IIT, you still get into an NIT, you still get into a triple IT. That doesn't happen from a UPSC perspective. If you don't get into UPSC, the second option, which is probably like an SSC, for example, there's a huge gap in between. And your mind somehow doesn't let you go for that. And because say you are from IIT, you are from a good engineering college, so now that you have come back in 2024 in tech, you realize that that is where I want to be. You are suddenly so behind your peers. You have missed 1 or 2 waves, and waves play a lot of...
So you know nothing about AI if you took a gap.
AI, for example, and today, if a resume has nothing about AI, honestly, because most of the roles have some component of it, especially in cool companies or like the new age companies, so now you are just much behind your peers. And I see these resumes every day. So if you're someone who is in tech right now, and specifically in AI, right? If you have anything which goes with AI, chances are that in the next 4 to 5 years, it will be better or bigger. So I wouldn't recommend you to leave it all and go for UPSC, which is something which is much lesser chance. The only scenario in which I will still recommend you to go for UPSC is that if you are comfortable that, okay, I have to go in a government job. If I don't clear UPSC, I will go for State Public Service Commission. If I don't clear that, I will go for an SSC. If I don't clear that, I will still go for a banking. And you are very comfortable with that drop. If you are in that scenario, go for it. Otherwise, do not.
If I do UPSC, what kind of jobs can I expect at the end of it?
So the jobs are pretty good. You get into a public service job, which is basically very highly respected. So for example, I can tell you that in my family, an entrepreneur would be respected much less than a public service person for that matter. And this is true for the entire strata of society, right? So specifically in probably like non-metros.
How much money do they make?
So it's pretty cool, right? So you get probably like over $1 lakh in just basic salary, but there are a ton of perks. So you have a ton of perks. Then you have bonuses for projects.
Like a government-given house, car.
House, car, people to work with you, your phone bills, your electricity bills. There are a lot of things which add up to
And
a
respect,
factor.
like you said.
The respect is a huge factor. I think that's the biggest factor for being in a public service job. Not just from a respect from your parents, but respect from your society. And if that matters really big for you, I think I can understand why you are considering UPSC. But yeah, if you are considering that, be prepared that you might not get in. And then you should have a B plan in government job and go only if you have that B plan.
Okay, so next we have the CLAT, the CLAT. The CLAT. What does the CLAT do?
So this is an exam you need to clear if you want to get into a legal field.
Okay. Common law admission test.
Yes, and this is not too popular. So if I say like probably less than 1 lakh people give it, and you have to give it in class 12, by the way. So this competes directly with the likes of an IIT JEE or a NEET. And that's the reason, I know it's like, I'm not too like sure about between S and A, but for now I will place it on S. The reason I'm placing this is here, that, and I'm again thinking from a perspective of a person who has still not made a decision. If you have interest in public speaking, if you believe that you can articulate yourself, if you believe that you can work hard, because legal profession actually requires you to work really hard, if you can believe those things, then CLAT is a great option for you. Because what CLAT does is, you're only competing with probably 60,000 people. Not too many people know about it. And it's at the end of the day, it's all a supply-demand thing, right? The India needs lawyers. There are so many cases pending. Every single company has corporate lawyers. We work with a ton of lawyers ourselves. So India needs lawyers, right? But at the same time, and there are colleges for it also. For example, there are NLUs. And there are some very decent NLUs. NLU is a national law university. And they are, just like IITs, there are classes of NLUs. For example, there are top NLUs, for example, your, say, Nalsar, Hyderabad, or there are probably not newer NLUs, for example, right? But there are still 2K to 2.5K good seats in CLAT. And the difference is that for 2K or 5K good seats in IIT JEE, you are competing with 20 lakh people. And all of those people have been told so much about IIT JEE that they care about that exam.
Competition.
The competition is there. People care about that exam. People will probably be in quota for that. I was preparing quota with 5 lakh people, right? For CLAT, that competition doesn't exist to that degree, right? So you can, if you have an interest, and the only caveat here is that you should have an interest in things which a lawyer does, right? Of course, you might not know about law at that stage, and that's completely fine. But you should be able to understand about, okay, I am good at articulating things, I am good at probably discussions, I am probably good at, say, for example, you have your moods in college, or you have MUNs, or you have all those things. If you have signals that you are good at those things, if you have signals that you want to be in a role where probably the respect is a little bit higher side, you have longer working hours, if those things are fine with you, I would recommend you to go for CLAT.
How much do lawyers make?
A lot. So you can start with probably say like a 10 to 12 lakhs job, but on a higher level, a top lawyer will make much more, because a lot of these lawyers—
How much is much more?
Probably like a CR, more than that, because you usually have, so the best lawyers are independent, right?
And they have the best clients.
They are the best clients, and they have multiple clients.
So it's entrepreneurial in nature in a way.
And the best lawyers, ultimately, they do go on an entrepreneurial basis. Even from a particular smaller client, you probably charge 2 lakhs a month. And then you can just imagine that. And you don't need that big of a team. You can probably be 2 or 3 full-time people, partners and stuff. So from that perspective, from a career scope perspective, pay perspective, I think CLAT is a good exam to give from a 12th class perspective.
Got it. Not many people know about CLAT because it's not sexy.
Yes.
But there still seems to be some of the respect of UPSC, some of the money of the JEEs.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of diversity here also, right? So you can be a, say, public lawyer, which is a very different trajectory. You can be a corporate lawyer, again, very different trajectory. And after clearing CLAT, you can in fact probably give a couple of exams and become a judge, which is a completely different trajectory. There's a different set of respect, different set of pay. So you do have decent diversity in here also, compared to something very specific sort of.
Okay, so next we have the NEET exam.
Yeah, so this was the choice I had to make in class 10. So I have some opinion about it. I think I would rank it at a B. Okay, I will go A. I will tell you why I switched from B to A. So the problem with NEET is, it is very competitive, right? So it's same competitive as an IIT JEE, but IIT JEE, you can probably do nothing in your college life and then still have an option to revive your career later on. NEET is different, right? A lot of the top doctors you see in India, for example, they had excellent college degrees. The second thing about NEET is, it's a long journey. So I'll tell you like about a cousin of mine who is studying in AIMS Patna. He's one of he's the brightest kids I know. He went into college alongside me, right? At this point of time, he's probably still 3 to 4 years away from practicing being a medic, right? But I am already in a workplace. A lot of people at this point of time, people spend at least like 8 to 10 years. So because in NEET, you have to do in UZ, right? You're undergraduate, but undergraduate is never enough. So you have to do a PG. And then even after PG, if you want to be someone who is like probably well sought after, you would probably do a specialization after your PG. So it's a long journey. And it's a very tough journey. So I know, like personally know that these people usually don't have any sort of freedom at all. You have very tough schedules, especially even in your PG, that's even tougher because you have to treat actual patients. So it's not just tougher in terms of, say, for example, I can say that I work 12 hours a day and they also work 12 hours a day, but my 12 hours a day involves working on the computer, right? I can take a walk around and still work on a mobile phone. Their 12 hours of the day involves acting in a very serious tone. Because you are working on actual patients, you are dealing with life. You are dealing with, like, for example, diseases and all. So in that terms, NEET is a very stressful job. And so it's a high stress thing. Now, the reason I will still put it on A is, I personally know a lot of people who derive great pleasure in it because they essentially feel that they want to help most people. So out of all the things we have addressed, like some people might say that UPSC is the best way to help most people, but I personally feel that NEET is that. Because you actually become a doctor, you can save lives, and like there's a lot of correlation between that. So I think like in that terms, I personally know of a lot of people who feel that NEET is they're just too passionate about it. They want to help more people and they're ready to put in extra efforts for it. So from that perspective, NEET is good. The second thing is the pay is great. So if you're able to go through this, like line of fire or whatever you can call it. So if you're able to go through this 10 years or 8 to 10 years, that's a very successful career awaiting at the end of it. It will be stressful, but in terms of pure, paisa, and if you're comparing from that perspective, there's a lot of money in this.
Okay, how much money would the top doctors make?
So the top doctors will make in multiple crores. And that's like much bigger than probably like a top engineer, not in an entrepreneur sense. I think that's a very different thing. Yeah, but like even in top, as similar
but
to
entrepreneurship is okay. Like in a sense, you could be a doctor and then start your own hospital. In which case, you'll make even more, right?
Yeah, that's what I say. It's similar to how you have in CLAT, where if you're a top lawyer, you will start your own independent business. If you're a top doctor, you will start your own independent business, and then the upside is infinite. So if you think from that perspective, NEET does have a lot of respect at the end of it and money at the end of it. The only problem is it's much difficult than IIT JEE to go through. So if you're ready for that grind, and I think the country needs more doctors, so from that perspective, NEET is a good choice.
Got it. So next, let's go after, I think this should be special to you, right? Like the IELTS. I feel like one of the things you were telling me before we got online, before we started doing this, was that you said a lot of the people that use your app, Stimuler, are actually training for the IELTS, right? So you know a lot about this entrance exam. Tell us where you rank it and what you know about it.
So I think like other than having a lot of people use Stimuler to prepare for it, I have given this exam myself. So I have some perspective from that. And the problem with ranking it with these exams is that IELTS is a need to exam. So you don't like aspire to be an IELTS ranker in your class 10, right? There is no aspiration associated with it. You aspire with probably studying abroad. And this is the key to that, right? So for example, specifically with IELTS, so it stands for International English Language Testing System. And it's basically mandatory in a lot of colleges you want to study in. Specifically in UK, I think this is much more mandatory. You would probably have TOEFL, which is much more mandatory in US. So in IELTS, specifically, you only need to do it if you want to go abroad. The good thing about IELTS though, compared to say for example, something like a GRE or GMAT, is that it's easy. And what I mean that it's easy from a perspective, right? So it won't require you to prepare for 6 months or 2 years or 1 year. You can probably prepare it in 1 month or 2 months. The thing is that it depends a lot on how your English level has been throughout your career. Because say for example, a lot of exams have English. So for example, if you want to get an MBA, you have to clear CAT, right? And CAT has an English section. The difference between English section of a CAT and an IELTS is that you don't just have to probably remember vocabulary. You just don't have to probably know a lot of words or be able to understand passages. But you actually have to speak, right? And one of the sections in IELTS, so IELTS has 4 sections. So you have reading, listening, speaking, and writing,
Yeah.
right? So in the speaking section, you actually have a conversation. So there's a one-to-one interviewer or a person sitting in front of you, often from a native country, and you need to have a 15 minutes conversation with them. So, and that conversation is often impromptu, right? So you are not given a script to speak. You are basically asked questions on the go about yourself, about random topics in the world, about some experience of yours, and you have to give a very structured answer. You have to be fluent, pronunciation and stuff. So from that perspective, it might be difficult for someone who is not from an English native background, because like knowing the language in terms of knowing words or being able to understand English, I feel that's really different from being able to have a conversation in that language. And that's one of the reasons why we started Stimuler also, right? So the reason a lot of people use Stimuler for IELTS is because you are able to have this environment inside the app, right? Where you are in front of an interviewer or an AI who is acting like an interviewer, which is very similar as of now today. So you have this interviewer, you are sitting with them, you have 15 minutes exact conversation, and they can act on the go just like a normal interviewer does. And it can then rank you on the same metrics IELTS exam ranks you on. So while the listening and reading section are easier to prepare because you often have material available for it, the speaking section is one where non-native English speakers find the most difficulty in. And this is where Stimuler helps them into. We also help them in writing, which is more about being able to sort of put your thoughts down, be able to structure it and stuff. So that is also what we help in, but primarily our goal is to help people in IELTS speaking. And that is where people use it for today. So this is one of the biggest use cases people use.
And you also said IELTS helps you attack as Stimuler like a global market.
Yes.
Right? You're able to go after everybody else. How did you actually get to global scale? What's the secret for you as an app to get to 2 million people so quickly?
So I think a lot of factors came into play. There's a lot of luck involved. There's a lot of strategy involved. So from beginning, because my background was in debating, right? So I was able to do a lot of global debating across 15 different countries. So I knew that the global landscape in conversation skills or the aspiration to speak English, I think that's similar across countries, right? That is something we really knew about. And then also because we were starting in college, there's an ambition factor. You want to be the first company to do this. And for us, that was that we wanted to be the first company which has probably 100 million users and less than 20 million is from India, right? That is the consumer tech out of India brand we wanted to build. Now, a few things happened. First, due to our debating network and other network, I reached out to a person on Twitter, which is from Indonesia. I asked her to review the app. She ended up writing about a thread about the app, right? And what happened was it caught a viral wave. So Stimula has a feature where you probably do a conversation and then you get feedback, which is the first time an app does that, right? Because you could be graded on your grammar and vocabulary before also, but the ability to judge probably your pronunciation or your fluency, that's something which has been possible only the last couple of years, right? So we are able to give you that. And that scoring part simply got a viral wave in Indonesia. And the thing about IELTS is that it's a doorway to go abroad, right? And this doorway, while this is very prevalent in India, it's not limited to India. So for example, someone sitting in a Colombia, or for example, a Peru, they also want to go abroad. For example, someone sitting in Indonesia, they also want to study abroad,
and it's
right?
still one test.
It's still one test, and they all give this. So for example, I think globally, probably 6 to 7 million people give IELTS each year. And a lot of these people are outside India.
I remember someone from the team telling me that they've read about you in the newspaper. That's the first interaction with you, right? That was also part of you going viral in a way?
Yeah, so that was majorly because of Google Play, honestly. So we have been a Google Play partner for a long time. I think Google Play was the reason we got this much viral also. Because once we had this Indonesia virality, and due to IELTS, some global audience base, and over the next 5-6 months, the App Store optimization, which is your app version of SEO, for example, that got us a lot of downloads from all over the world. So we were able to see which countries the app really resonates with, and we were able to build with that. Then we were a part of App Scale Academy, where they taught us how best apps scale.
What is App Scale Academy?
So it's an academy for 100 most promising app-based startups out of India.
This is by Google?
This is by Google Play. And then they are able to help you with scaling, help you with design, help you with security. So they gave each of these startups a security report and all. And then in December last year, we also won Google Play's Best AI App of 2023.
Next, let's take on the cat. Let's see where you'll bell the cat.
Okay. So I will place it at A. Okay. So now again, this is very relevant for people who are already in an undergrad degree, right? So they are in an undergrad degree and they are deciding if they want to go for business or not. The good thing about CAT is It's a low risk, high reward thing. I will explain you how. Because most of the people give CAT in their 4th year of college.
Okay.
Or they give it after 2 years in workplace, right? I will cover the first part because I gave CAT in that period, right? I was just giving it for fun, but I gave CAT in that period. The one good thing about CAT is that the syllabus is very similar to the placement test you will give. So if you're an engineering student who is not preparing for coding jobs, much of your placement test would involve logical reasoning, English, quant, and all those things. And this is exactly what the syllabus of a CAT exam is. So you don't need to put in extra efforts for that. Of course, you need to prepare. If you really want to get into an IIM A, B, C, for example, or the top management colleges in India, you need to put in effort. But that effort is not too difficult for you if you're an engineering grad. Now, the situation of CAT changes completely if you're a non-engineering grad. Because the English, so CAT is 4 sections, right? Quant, English, LRDI, so 3 sections, sorry. Quant, English, and LRDI, right? Out of that, quant is very easy for engineering students because the quant level is not too high.
What is quant for the audience?
Quant is basically your mathematics, basic arithmetics, and stuff like that. So that is more of a class 10 to class 12 level, which is easier for an engineering student. But if you go beyond engineering, for those people, quant is very tough because that's not something they have been studying for the last.
Like an economics student would not have.
Yes. So for them, English is the easier part, quant is the difficult part. From switch the sides, and for them, English is the tougher part, and English takes less time to prepare than a quant, for example. So that sense, then you need to prepare for 2-3 months for CAT. The upside is that CAT is accepted in a lot of colleges in India. So if you want to get into business, you feel that your engineering is not from a top degree, and you feel that you can't get into opportunities. So right now, in the last 2-3 years, I think a lot of opportunities are opening up in business at the undergraduate level also. So for example, product management, or for example, marketing roles also, though that's very limited. But if you feel that you're not getting those opportunities, in the 4th year, you can apply for CAT, probably alongside your placements and stuff. And then the whole management world opens up for you. And getting into an IIM, for example, is life changer for now. Because if you get into an IIM, for example, and a top IIM at that, the chances increase a lot. And the competition is not that high compared to the competition at an undergrad level.
What kind of money can these people make if you do well at a CAT and get into the best IIM?
So I think Ahmedabad's average package was somewhere around 30, 25 to 30.
30 LPA.
Yes, and I think that was a year back. So I'm not sure how that has grown or evolved over the time, but I think this is also increasing a lot, right? Because these are mostly generalists. And I think like you might probably agree with that in AI world specifically, generalists can do a lot of things. So a lot of these people start their companies. So if you see, I think like there was a stat that probably, 80% of Indian unicorns are from IIM founders. So I am not sure about that number, but I think that is a...
Interesting. So it's a good path eventually to become a founder. But my own opinion of MBAs is if you're going to the top ones, great.
Yes.
But if you by mistake get into a 2nd tier or a 3rd tier MBA, like it actually makes your life harder. I'll make a separate video about that. But I feel like being at the top really matters because a peer network in the MBAs is more important than what you're being taught. Because what you're being taught, honestly, is not as important as you being in the same classroom as some other really brilliant generalist.
I think that's true for a lot of these things, right? Even from an IIT perspective, I think what we were taught is only important if you are going in a core engineering field. Yeah. Even from a CSE perspective, that doesn't count. In CAT also, the management relations, while they are important, for example, if you want to go into traditional management, for example, in HUL or that field, but if you want to go into tech or if you want to start a company, I think the peer group is much more important. So I agree with you on that.
Got it. Next, let's go to the GATE.
So GATE in India, I will put it at B. Okay. So again, the bias here is that GATE is great for people who probably are interested in the core field. So if you're a mechanical undergrad, so GATE basically is given by people in college or just outside, right? And if you are someone who is interested in mechanical engineering, for example, you can give GATE and get into a mechanical master's. And then that MTech is useful because you are getting understanding in that degree, right? As I told that if you are studying in an IIT, if you are in a core degree, you can still learn something. Yeah. So you can learn more in MTech and you can be more valuable to the industry. Yeah. The second thing is a lot of people give GATE for, okay, maybe I can do an MTech in CSE or MTech in IT. So I can tell you from my personal experience, I was also part of placement cell of IIT JEE while I was in college, right? I can tell you from my personal experience, that doesn't happen. So if a company is hiring from a tech perspective, they don't give that much extra value to an MTech compared to a BTech. So if someone did a BTech from a similar college, went to any tech company, spent a couple of years working on their skills or projects or stuff, they are probably valued more than the person who chose an MTech after that.
Interesting.
And that is something I have seen in terms of hiring, that I have seen in terms of placements. Again, it might be a sample bias because of like probably in an IIT JEE perspective or from other colleges perspective, but I think that is true in what I have seen other colleges also. The good part about GATE, for example, is that you can also use it as a placement test. I'll give an example of that. So a lot of public sector companies in India, PSUs specifically, they hire through GATE. Right? So for example, if you want to get into a GAIL, which is basically the Gas Authority Limited of India, if you want to do a GAIL, for example, you can give GATE and you can get into that. So for example, you don't want to do an MTech, right? But you are still interested in a mechanical engineering job or an electronics engineering job. So because the GATE syllabus is mostly based on your subject. So GATE for an CSE differs from GATE for a mechanical engineer, right? So if you're going from a GATE for a mechanical engineering perspective, you can give that exam. If you get a good rank, you also get admission in MTechs if you want, but you can also use that rank to get into PSUs directly. So if you want to use it as a placement test, and because you have already studied that subject for 4 years, then this is a good alternative for me.
Okay, so next I have two more in front of me, but I think they're kind of similar, the GMAT and the GRE, right? You have thoughts on GMAT versus GRE?
So I will tell you the basic differentiation between that. The differentiation is what colleges it unlocks for you.
Okay.
So for example, say you want to go into a foreign MBA, right? By the way, like both of these exams are required to go into studying abroad again.
Okay, along with IELTS.
Along with IELTS. So IELTS is for English proficiency. This is more for your aptitude proficiency in that matter.
What does aptitude stand for the audience?
So aptitude is basically your ability to answer questions on the go, your ability to think analytically. So that is basically what they test. And the difference between that is, for example, if GMAT is basically for MBA, right? So if you want admission in a foreign MBA college, you would have to clear GMAT. Now the caveat is some colleges have started accepting both GMAT and GRE for MBA also, but mostly it's for GMAT. The one extra benefit for GMAT is that you also can get admission in ISB, which is the Indian School of Business, which is one of the best MBA colleges alongside your top IIMs. So that is an extra benefit which GMAT unlocks for you. So you might be wondering if someone doesn't want to go outside, does they still have probably a meaning for GMAT? Yes, probably for ISB. But other than that, very similar exams. So you have your English, you have your maths or quant. These are the two basic ideas. English is slightly on the tougher side here compared to CAT. This is like not too big of a difference, but if you're preparing for a GMAT or a GRE, because the differentiation is that you have to probably prepare for, say for example, a lot of vocabulary.
This is for in GMAT.
Yes.
And what is the difference between GRE? Why is GRE easier?
So GRE is not easier as such. I'm saying that GRE is also very similar in syllabus. The exam format is different. So for example, in fact, GRE is slightly tougher than GMAT, right? Because GRE has probably 2 essays instead of 1 in GMAT. GRE probably has a slightly higher English level compared to your GMAT. So in that terms, GRE is a slightly tougher exam. But in terms of that, I would probably place it both at an A only.
Okay, so let's just put both at A.
Because it often, like again, it's a need to exam, you probably will give it.
And where does the GRE get you? Like if I crack the GRE versus the GMAT, what are the opportunities like?
So if you clear GRE, it's often required for you doing a Masters of Science, so MS. So if you want to do an MS in a foreign college, I think GRE is a great exam for you. And that's the basic difference between GRE and GMAT. So the format is different, the subjects are same, and the difficulty level is slightly higher in GRE, but yeah, that's controversial. By the way, like one interesting thing which happened with GMAT is that the format had changed a bit. So they are trying to prioritize quant a little bit more.
So your mathematical ability.
Yes, because if you think about it, they're already able to judge your English proficiency by IELTS or a TOEFL, because IELTS also has a reading test or a listening test. So they're able to judge your vocabulary through that. So they're slightly increasing the proficiency, and I think the average scores will come down a bit due to that, because a lot of people who give are not that good in maths, for example. But from that perspective, I think GMAT is slightly prioritizing quant. I'm not sure about
what kind of jobs do you get after the GMAT and GRE?
So depends a lot on, so both are very different in that terms, right? Because if you do a foreign MBA, for example, now foreign MBA, the peer group is even better if you get from a top college, right? My personal belief is that if you don't get into a top college outside India for MBA, you should not go there. Because I think like even if you go from a top college perspective, I would highly recommend to probably come back to India. I'm a big believer of the India growth story in that terms. And I also think that if you get from probably a tier 3 college, it doesn't add value to your resume based on the amount it costs you. And it costs a lot. So in that terms, GMAT didn't add you that of a value.
What about this one?
GRE is often really good because these are people. So even in my college, the people who gave this are people who are doing research and people who are doing great research at the top US colleges, right?
What kind of research?
So this is either research in computational biology, for example, or you go very deep into one specific part of quantum physics, for example. So they're very specific things. And the demand of these people is crazy because you are experts, right? Probably experts with
Specialized experts.
Yes, probably more specialization than an AI has. So in that terms, the demand of these people are increasing a lot.
Got it. We have 2 more left. There's NID,
Okay.
which is design.
Okay.
Where do you think this flows?
Unfortunately, I'll put it at C.
Okay. Finally, we have a C.
Okay.
I'm not from NID. I was just crying for the NID people watching this.
So I think design is a huge field. I think the demand of UI UX design is a lot. The problem is that NID has 2 things you can get into NID for. So you can get into an NID for probably growing into the core design fields. So for example, textile design, or for example, there's a lot of other designs, industrial design and stuff, right? Or you can go in for UI UX design. The thing is UI UX design pays more right now. So a lot of people get into NID for that. And I don't think that's a good investment because I was reading a lot about it. I didn't find that NIDs have a great placement record in that terms. And secondly,
In UI UX.
In UI UX, right? As a whole also, like if you compare it from that perspective. And the second thing which happens is that in UI UX design, for example, when I am hiring for that,
You don't
portfolio matters a lot more.
Yeah, you don't care about the degree.
So, for example, an NID or a NIF will probably score them 1 bonus point out of 100, which is a good thing that, okay, they have studied this for the last 4 years. But at the end of the day, if you are someone from an IIT, for example, who has done UI UX design, I'd probably still prefer them more because they understand tech products and they understand them more. So again, this is a biased perspective from a tech product perspective. If you want to go into core design, I unfortunately find that there's a very limited number of people who really care about
And
that.
I feel like UI UX design you can learn in 5-6 months by yourself. At least the basics, right? To the point where NID puts you out at 3 or 4 years. Again, there's nothing against NID. I think design is very dependent on the person's taste. Right? So if you have the taste, then you can get in.
I'll give an example. The only full-time designer we have at Stimula is actually a dentist turned designer. They have zero background in studying design as such.
A lot of the designers we hire are exactly like that. They were doing something completely, totally different.
It's more about the taste, as you said. So if they have a taste in design, they can learn design very soon and they can create a solid portfolio. And a solid design portfolio, especially put in public, I think that's worth much, much more than a degree. So nothing against an idea, I just feel that from a UI UX design perspective, it's not worth it.
And what kind of jobs do, at least the first, you said there are 2 sections, right? One is the textile folks and things like that, fashion and all that. How much money do they make?
So they are less than your usual engineering. So this is
70, 80K a month?
Yeah, close to that, probably even slightly lower on that. If you take an average perspective, there's a growth potential there. So if you like open Coda and you search for NID placements, you'll find a lot of people who probably started their career at 20K or 30K and they have grown over the years to 2 lakhs or 3 lakhs. I find that growth scale to be very lower or the curve to be much slower compared to an engineering degree or a tech job, for example. So if you want to go to UI UX design, probably get into a tech college and work on that. Because if you have a tech skill plus a UI UX design skill, I think that's much more valuable than a degree plus a skill that.
So the last one, we have the NDA. What does the NDA stand for?
So it stands for National Defense Academy. And you need to give this exam in your class 12th or before the end of class 12th to be able to get into either of Army, Navy or Air Force. So of course, like probably the top of the ladder when it comes to like serving for the country and stuff. And I also feel that the NDA exam is very difficult, by the way. But I was reading about it. I think that probably if someone asks if a junior and one of my siblings actually wants to prepare for NDA, and I think it's a good job in that terms because not a lot of people in class 11, 12 level are very serious about it, right? So you haven't benefit in that terms. But the number of seats are also very low, right? So the reason I won't put it in an A, for example, is that NDA hardly has 300, 400 seats, right? And you still have a lakhs of people appearing that exam. So the competition is very tough. But if you really care about this exam, right? If you go deeper into NDA preparation as such, the subjects in here is also again maths and English. So that's a common part across a lot of these exams.
So ultimately, what I can see is that it's mostly math and English.
Yes.
And math, sure, you're either, you've practiced it since grade 4, grade 5, and you've gotten good at it over the years, or you've gone to tuition for it and solved lots of problems. Or it's English, which is learnt best conversationally, right? Like I've never seen anyone read a book on English and just get good. It's more like you do it again and again and again till you get really good at it. Interesting.
And the one thing about NDA is that GK is also involved in here. So again, that puts you slightly on an advantage.
Same with UPSC, right?
Yeah, if you're preparing for an NDA versus if you're preparing for an IIT and still giving NDA. So that puts you in a slight of advantage, and the pay scale is great. So basically, if you clear NDA, you would go into a 3 years process training, and then you would get into a lieutenant role in an Air Force or a Army, and the pay scale is pretty good. I think it's over 1 lakh if you
plus all the perks.
Plus all the perks.
So these two seem like they have lots of perks, both on the B level, but they come more with perks than actual cash.
Yes. The thing is that UPSC has much more competition, NDA has, and the number of seats are similar.
Got it. This was exhaustive. It was long. I learned so much. I understand ultimately it boils down to English and math. If you do English and math well, you can do all of this. And I think this is very useful to see the scope of how everything goes. You've added lots of nuance and color both on the side as a student a few years ago, now running an app that has many of these people come in to prepare for it. Thank you so much for this. Is there anything you want to leave the audience with? No, especially somebody looking at entrance exams.
So I think you would be either falling into 2 parts. If you are someone who is very passionate about one of these things, please go towards that. No matter what I say today about IIT JEE being the top thing, if you're passionate about NEET, for example, or passionate about even NDA, you have a much better chance to do this while going into the IIT.
Because everyone else hates it.
Everyone else
they're doing
hates
it for a job.
Yes, that will put you out of a league. But if you have zero clue, don't go for something too niche, because you probably won't be able to generate enough passion or interest in it to sign out at the top. And I think being at the top in any field is much better than being at the average in a field. So that's what I feel.
I want to ask you one question about your own app, about Stimuler. There's a lot of competition. There's a bunch of AI apps that will now say, hey, allow me to do a conversational agent, teach me English, give me, feedback and all that. I'm sure you want to become the best, right? How do you know you're doing well, and what's the plan for the future for you?
So I think from day one when we started, we knew that this is a global problem, this is a large scale problem, so there would be competition. If not today, maybe when the tech is mainstream, there would be competition. So our focus always has been staying one layer ahead specifically and building the best product globally. Yeah. So if you are competing with someone building an app in US, we have to make sure that the product is better. And for that, AI is of course the thing which we have been investing a lot in. So for example, last year we won the Google Play's Best AI App Award on Play Store, which is basically...
That's major.
Yes, that was the first year where our app was live. And it tells us that in terms of AI specifically, we are doing among the best work in India. And we want to top it up, right? In the next year, we probably want to win this award in 10 different countries, right? So that's the number one thing. Number two thing we are doing is that we are investing a lot in AI architecture, right? So because a lot of our work deals with raw audio. So what we are trying to do is, can we build an architecture which is very specific to us, which we can own? Because that eventually gives you a tech advantage, if not for perpetuity, at least for the next 2 to 3 years. So that is something we are investing in. We are setting up a long-term AI team at an early stage itself. And that's the basic idea. I think the only way to win from competition is have the best product. If you have the best product globally, and you're able to figure out distribution, which is a key thing, of course. So if you have the combination of these two, I think you can just win. So that's the philosophy.
Lovely. I mean, you're 22, 23, hearing you walk in with so much enlightenment, knowing these spaces so well, knowing your app so well. It's very inspiring to see. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully the audience likes it as well. That's it for me. That's it for Akshay. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment. You know the drill. Bye.